Hello out there in YouTube land. It's me, Logan Albright, back again with another book review for your viewing pleasure. You know, everybody's out there talking about things like police reform and justice reform right now. It's a controversial time. A lot of controversial ideas are being thrown around. And in that spirit, I wanted to talk to you about a very controversial book that I read a long time ago, but has stuck with me ever since. It's called Resist Not Evil by Clarence Darrow. Clarence Darrow was a famous attorney. He was involved in a lot of the most famous cases of the early 20th century, late 19th century. And he spent a lifetime around courts of law, around criminals, around police, around things of that nature. And after a lifetime of that, he came to a radical conclusion. And his radical conclusion was that the justice system as we know it does not work, and that it basically should be abolished. What he's basically arguing in this book is an abolition of courts and that we shouldn't punish criminals for crimes. Now, that's on its face, it seems like a crazy idea. And I'm going to come out right away and say that I don't really agree with it. But I think it's important to read radical books. I think it's important to read books that challenge your assumptions, your very basic assumptions about society. And this is one of them that has done that. And although I have ultimately disagreed with the conclusion of it, it's stuck with me for a long time. And I think about it a lot, especially in troubled times like we're in right now. I spend a lot of time thinking about this. And, you know, right now we're seeing people calling for defunding of police departments, abolition of police departments. And there's a tendency to dismiss that as that's insane and utopian and there's no way that would ever work. But I don't think we should dismiss it. We don't have to agree with it, but I don't think we should dismiss it. I think we should think about it. And in this book, Clarence Darrow is proposing a very similar idea, very radical. And he's basically said that it's a very Christian worldview. He's saying that violence begets violence, hate begets hate, repaying evil with more evil just compounds evil, and that you should instead repay wrongdoing and evil with love and compassion and understanding. You should turn the other cheek, and you should try to make the world a better place through example and through your actions, rather than trying to just enact punishment or revenge or retribution against people who have wronged you. Personally, I'm a fan of nonviolence. I condemn violence in almost all its forms, but I'm not a pacifist. I think that violence in self-defense is not only justified, but sometimes morally imperative. But Clarence Darrow really, you know, he speaks with such passion and such conviction and such expertise in his subject that it's hard not to take him seriously, and it's hard not to be moved by his pleas for a more understanding and compassionate society. You know, he's not just some, Marxist college kid in his parents' basement saying, oh, wouldn't it be great if there was no police, if there was no violence. He's, been in the system for a long time, and he's seen a lot, and he's experienced a lot, and he's seen a lot of horrible people. And he knows the horrors that crime can visit upon society firsthand. And I don't think he's being dismissive of those. I don't think that he's passively just saying, well, those don't exist, we don't have to worry about that. And I don't think he's naive to the facets of human nature that cause aggression and crime and wrongdoing and sometimes evil. I think he understands all that. And nevertheless, he's come to the conclusion that using the justice system as it exists now, with a punishment model, just doesn't work. And it creates more crime, it creates more hatred, it creates more victims, and it doesn't help the victims of the crimes, and it doesn't make society a better place. So he's proposing an alternative. It's a fascinating read. This edition was published by the Ludwig von Mises Institute, which I have a lot of books from them because they publish a lot of libertarian literature. It's very short. It's like 85 pages. You can read it in one sitting. But it's definitely one of those books that has stuck with me over the years and that I think about all the time, because I think that although I don't agree with his conclusions and I think we need some kind of way to deal with criminals, it's definitely got something there. There's some good ideas in there, and there's something to his plea that speaks to me anyway and makes me think about it. This book was written in 1902, and I believe that it is public domain and available for free on the internet, so you don't have to buy a copy, but it's worth having a copy on your shelf. And I like this radical green edition with this cool cover with the bars and everything. It's nice to have. It's definitely a book that people who are interested in justice reform, police reform, any kind of radical changes to society, anyone who's interested in political philosophy, everyone should read this. I have a friend who's a lawyer. You've seen her on this channel before. Her name's Allison. She said she had to read this in law school, so I think it's definitely a good read for any aspiring lawyers out there. But just anyone who's interested in challenging the way they think about society and who's frustrated with the way things are going now and wants to think about a better way of doing things, it's worth a read. And again, I like to read radical books that propose radical ideas. And even the ones I don't agree with, especially ones I don't agree with, because they really make you think. And I like to think about things, and I like to challenge the assumptions you have, and I like to think, what more basic assumption do we have about society than that criminals have to be punished? It's something that people just assume. And if you suggest otherwise, they laugh at you and they say you're crazy and a utopian, and that would never work. But don't just say it would never work. Think about it. Spend some time thinking over these issues, hearing the arguments on both sides, and really diving into what an alternative could look like. And you may well, as I have concluded, conclude that it wouldn't work, but it's worth thinking about. And I don't ever think we should just laugh off ideas that seem strange or radical, because we've had radical ideas in the past that nobody thought would work, and they ended up working. America, for example, was a pretty radical idea, a radical experiment in self-government, and people thought that would never work. And I think it's worked pretty well despite some of the problems that we've had. I'm also interested in this book because through my work, I've been introduced to a restorative justice program in Colorado, which has really been eye-opening and definitely made me rethink some of my preconceptions about the justice system. The restorative justice program is basically focused on, instead of trying to punish criminals by putting them in jail or fining them or things like that, they try to find a way to restore the property or the harm that's done to a victim. They try to find a way to make that whole, and it's a whole community process, and it involves people taking responsibility for their actions and confronting the people they've wronged, and dealing with it like civilized adults instead of just locking someone in a cage or making them pay money. They have to actually step up and admit what they've done, understand why it was wrong, hear about the harm that they've caused firsthand, confront that emotionally, and then figure out a way to try to make things right. And that is a lot more helpful to victims than just having someone be locked away, because it may be emotionally satisfying to have someone be locked away and they've wronged you, but it doesn't actually restore anything that they've taken from you or that they've destroyed of yours. So trying to restore those things, I think, is a little bit more productive way of dealing with it. And this book reminds me a lot of the restorative justice ideas. I think they probably got some ideas from Clarence Darrow and from this general thesis of rethinking the justice system. So there you go, a little light reading for you while you're under quarantine or out attending protests or just sitting at home lamenting the state of the world in this crazy, crazy year of 2020. Clarence Darrow, Resist Not Evil, certainly worth checking out, and a thought-provoking book to say the least. I hope you enjoy it. I've been Logan Albright. I've been a little remiss in my novel reading lately. I'm trying to get back into it, but I've been a little bit unmotivated to read much. So I'm going to try to get back to you pretty soon with some more videos. I got a big one coming up. I don't want to reveal what it is, but I've been reading a long series of books that I want to review all as one video, but I haven't got through them yet. So when I do, I'll be back with that. Stay tuned, and until that time, be sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts.